Oh dear. The Roadhouse remake is absolutely terrible. The original was hardly The Godfather or The Shawshank Redemption, but it had quotable one-liners and entertaining fight scenes. The remake is a 40-car pile-up. The comedy bits are about as funny as being shot in the face by Ron Jeremy. The fight scenes are permeated with crappy choreography and shamelessly bad CGI. Who needs stuntmen when you can have computers doing it all for you? Jake Gyllenhaal plays Dalton, a former UFC fighter hired to clean up a bar full of violent thugs and degenerates. Swayze's original Dalton was cool, philosophical, and tough as nails. Gyllenhaal's Dalton is a bit of a bore who wallows in self-pity when he isn't right up his own arse. The movie starts at an underground fight club. Man Boob the Merciless is taking on all comers. That's until Dalton walks in. He sees Jake Gyllenhaal and now is counting the number of steps toward the door. But once he's outside, Man Boob the Merciless gets all brave and decides he's going to stab Dalton to death. I have yet to secure my doctorate from the Faceless Man School of Assassins, but I'm pretty sure if you're really afraid of a guy and you're going to stab him, you don't shout across a car park and let him know you're coming. Anyway, Dalton ends up getting stabbed, but he doesn't seem to care.
Ooh, you're hard, showing off.
It's then we're introduced to the most unconvincing bar owner ever. She offers Dalton a job as a bouncer because rowdy locals have started causing trouble in her bar. Dalton initially refuses, and this would have been the smart play because it materialises that she's a complete lying scumbag. She isn't having trouble with rowdy locals at all, but is being threatened by gangsters, assassins, and corrupt police officers. They want her bar shut so they can build some luxury condos. Yes, this is definitely the kind of thing they train you for when you're learning MMA or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The movie doesn't really address the moral questionability of Frankie's actions, basically luring men into mortal danger under false pretenses. Instead, she's framed as a paragon of moral virtue. She's the only one standing up against the evil tide of men who are taking over this island in the Florida Keys. Again, the movie doesn't really explain Frankie's determination to hold on to her bar in the face of such overwhelming danger. I can only assume she's just sticking two fingers up to the patriarchy. Having refused Frankie's offer, Dalton decides it will be a better use of his time to park his car on the nearest train track. If the film had ended here, it probably would have been for the better. Instead, Dalton has a near-death experience, which not only cures him of any suicidal feelings for the rest of the movie, but it also has him catching the first bus to the Florida Keys. We are then subjected to a painful interaction with a woke hippie girl who befriends Dalton by giving him a book about dancing trees and saying awful things like, "So maybe you're not the hero. I got news for you. You ain't the villain either." I was down to my last 6 vomit bags at this point, so it was panic stations at the ready. I don't know why we get so many of these nauseating characters in just about every mainstream program these days. After what seems like an eternity, Dalton eventually arrives at the imaginatively named The Roadhouse.
Did you put that together yourself, Einstein? What, you got a team of monkeys working around the clock on this?
The Roadhouse doesn't really seem like a violent headbutt bar, but more like an idyllic beach club you'd find in Ibiza. The clientele, the bar staff, and the existing set of bouncers are soft as shit. This, for me, was the most ridiculous part of the movie, and that's saying something. The idea that any of these people would continue going to this place, given the continual outbreaks of mindless violence, is just about the most absurd thing ever. People like this do not go to headbutt bars. "Oh dear, you appear to have sprayed blood all over my avocado and tofu burger. Does this mean it isn't vegan anymore?" "Never mind, darling. I'll just step over this crowd of dead bodies so I can order us another round of white wine and Perrier." We then get a truly awful fight where Dalton takes on a group of villains by slapping them. The whole scene is a complete rip-off of Colin Farrell's fight with young hoodlums in The Gentleman, but it isn't done nearly as well. The Gentleman doesn't have a painfully cheesy scene where the victims are driven to the nearest hospital. What was the point of this? Was it to show how cool and caring Dalton was? Was it supposed to be funny? Well, for me it was just corny and cringe. Although the scene does introduce us to Dr. Ellie, She's the romantic interest. Only problem is there's absolutely zero chemistry between her and Dalton. And the actress looks like she's being held at gunpoint, wondering how she ended up in this shower of a movie. Before I knew it, I found myself watching Alligator 2: The Mutation. When I was a kid watching the original Roadhouse, I remember thinking to myself, you know what this film needs? It needs a great big fucking crocodile to start eating up the bad guys. I'm only surprised Jake Gyllenhaal didn't offer him a job. To be honest, the crocodile was probably the best actor in the film. Following this, we are treated to a 5-minute gratuitous butt shot as Conor McGregor's Knock stalks around a market looking for some new threads. Is this supposed to make him look tough? Is it supposed to make him look scary? It just makes him look like an utter wanker. McGregor is terrible in this movie, and based on this performance, I don't think his foray into acting is going to yield much fruit. That said, the sheer over-the-topness of his performance is probably the most entertaining thing about this movie. What is a more interesting question is why Jake Gyllenhaal is in this. I can only assume he needed the money. I don't really understand what this film was trying to be. Was it supposed to be serious? Was it meant to be a joke? They really shouldn't have called it Roadhouse because it's not actually a remake. They didn't even include the character of Wade Garrett, who was vitally important in the original. Not just for his epic one-liners, but it's also his murder that acts as the impetus for Patrick Swayze's Dalton to go crazy ape bonkers at the end of the movie. In the remake, they use the burning of a bookstore for this transition, and it doesn't work at all. I was expecting this film to be bad, but I underestimated how truly terrible it was going to be.